What's up, guys? Give you just a little bit to crowd in and hang out on your Monday afternoon. Wait for that notification to drop for everybody. Might be just a second. In the meantime, where's everybody from? Go ahead and drop it in the chat. Tell me where you're from. There's that notification. Here comes everybody rolling in. What's up, everybody? Glad you're here. Wow, we got a lot of people tonight. All different places. Very cool. Very cool. All right. So, yeah, here she is. I've been teasing this on my Instagram past couple days, and I'll touch on it just a little bit, kind of give you some of the details. Won't really go into depth like I will in the newest video that's going to come out next on the Challenger on the next edition of the series. You guys watch me pick up, and like early on in the series, I don't remember what part it was. It was a while back, but we actually picked up a 5.7 Grand Cherokee Hemi already, and it had around 50,000 miles on it. And the reason that it was even out of a vehicle was because it was a dealer replacement engine. Now, the reason that was happening is, the guy said he was a Chrysler tech. He said that he had actually, and just a disclaimer, this is not a normal video. This is just me talking. This is a live video. It's not a normal edited series to the channel. This is just a Monday night in my garage. If you don't like talking, then I'm sorry. Then this might not be the video for you. Anyway, the old 5.7 Hemi that we were going to put in the car was a 2015. It had a bad valve seal, supposedly. I don't know if that was the truth. I never looked into it. And it was a VVT engine, variable valve timing. So it's the newer style block, newer style heads, newer style cam, all that good stuff, newer style intake and everything. So it was a good engine, good foundation. And I got it for a really good deal, and that's why I picked it up. And that's why I thought, hey, let's put this in the Challenger. But the more I looked into it, the more I realized that the VVT is a little bit harder to manage. Now, you can get a harness for them. You can get a brand new VVT custom built harness, but it's a factory style harness. And I didn't like that. The biggest reason I didn't like that was because if I ever do any upgrades to this engine, I've got to take it to somebody to tune it for me. I don't have the flexibility of a modern style self-tuning EFI system or self-learning EFI system. So I don't want to do that just yet because the capability for the VVT engines just isn't totally quite there yet. And being that this is my first 5.7 swap, really wanted it to go as smooth as possible. So that brings us to where we are today. I went to a local junkyard and picked up this 5.7. It is a 2006 Grand Cherokee 5.7 Hemi with, I believe, 64,000 miles on it. So it's pretty much identical to what we have. It's just non-VVT. And I haven't pulled the intake off yet to see if it has MDS or not with the cylinder shut-off deactivation. Don't know about that. I'm assuming that it does, being out of a Grand Cherokee, not a truck. So I would say that I'm going to pull the intake off and inspect the cam, inspect the lifters, go through everything and just look at everything, regasket everything, just change out like the water pump, oil pump, and all that good stuff. Which, I mean, the oil pump might not even need changing, but, while we're there, we might as well just regasket everything and check everything over really nicely. And, probably just to be on the safe side, we'll maybe do if it does have MDS, I want to get rid of that. I have no need for the MDS. So we'll get the MDS plugs, get the non-MDS lifters, and if we want to change the cam at that point, we might, or we might just put it back in the car the way it is. just with the MDS deactivated and some quality lifters. So I know that a lot of people have claimed that the lifters have issues oiling and all that stuff, and that may be the case. So I'm not going to speak on whether or not they do because I don't have enough experience on them just yet. But just wanted to give you guys a little heads up. And what I want to do for this next video is you can see I've got this is Dad's 360 on his stand, and it was actually torn down. It's been in a couple live streams back. This thing was actually torn down. The heads were off of it, intake, and I actually just set them all back on there so we could do a size comparison. I want to show you guys who might, you Mopar guys out there who are a little bit nervous about jumping into something like this. I want to show you the size difference, the size comparison, and because I've had a few comments talking about how big this engine is, but if you really look at it compared to a small block, it's not that much bigger. The biggest difference is the size of the width of the heads. You can see how it narrows up at the top for the LA style cylinder head, while the Hemi head is very flat and wide. So that's where a lot of the width comes from on the Hemi. And speaking of height, they're pretty much identical. Now, I talked about this before, that these actually do use the early style bell housing. These bell housings are the exact same thing. They are totally the same. I actually verified that and put an old style Chrysler 4-speed bell housing up to my other Hemi, and it lined exactly perfectly. I mean, they're identical. So structurally, the blocks share a few things that are similar. And you can see that just looking at it from right here, they're not much of a difference. They're really not that big of a deal. They're very similar in size, and then the length of the engine itself, you can kind of see, not much of a difference really. And like I said, I'm actually going to measure these and show you the differences side by side of these engines together. Now, it does look like a bigger engine, but this one does have, it's got a bigger timing cover, but it has all the accessories on it besides the alternator and the AC compressor. But it's got the water pump on it. It's got the oil pan still on it, and this one I just stuck the timing cover and the balancer and the water pump on the front. This one still has the manifolds on it too. Those manifolds are impressive by how small they are and how much they tuck up in there, while these old LA engines are like giant log manifolds. So, just wanted to, that's what the next video will be about, and, kind of do a side-by-side comparison, because the Challenger had this style engine, it had a 318 in it, but structurally they're identical. So I want to compare the size of this engine to the size of this engine, and then if we get to it, then I'll start, I might pull the intake off and inspect if it has MDS or not, and I don't know if I'll probably pull the valve cover and just take a look inside the engine and see how well it was taken care of. Maybe pull the oil pan, but we'll wait till a later date to pull the timing cover and the heads. But I do want to take a look inside the engine and just see how it looks. But this engine right here, it actually had an issue with the crank. And here's the cam for it, actually. Dad had just pulled this out, and I measured it for him. And it turns out, I believe, what I figured out, I searched around a little bit and asked some forums, it seems like this is a stock replacement, like a 68 or 9 340 cam. So this would be a good little cam for like a 318. It's a little bit of it's a hotter cam than what a stock 318 would have came with. I measured it out to be about I think it was a 435 lift. On the intake and the exhaust side, so it's a single pattern cam, and I was able to find a very similar cam. I think it was a 430 and 440, 430 on the intake, 444 on the exhaust. So a little bit of variation, but I believe it's a stock replacement 340 cam. But anyway, what the issue was with this engine right here is that it's got hardly any ring groove, so it's a pretty low mile engine. And it's a good little engine here. I mean, I heard it run really nice. I mean, I saw the truck drive that it came out of. But this bolt is not a crank bolt. It is not designed to go in the end of that crank. And I wish I had one. I did somewhere, but I don't know where it's at. I wish I could show you the difference, but I think Dad actually left it in the crank, the other crank. But anyway, what's supposed to be in this thing is it's supposed to be a fine thread bolt, and it's a smaller. Well, I don't know if it's a smaller diameter, but it's a different thread pitch. And what they did, you can see it's got a little bit of RTV on it. And I bet that what happened was they ram jammed a bolt in there into the end of that crank and put some RTV on it to keep it from being loose in there, because the threads, you can see it's wobbling around like crazy. So they bought a bolt that was not right for that engine and basically ruined the crankshaft on this thing, because the threads are just awful. They're ruined. Let me see if I can find I had a flashlight somewhere that I have no idea. You can see also, this is the last live stream. In the last couple videos, we cleaned the shop. Took a little bit of time to finish that up and make it look a little bit nice. There's a light. Do a little bit of a cleanup on this thing because I got tired of tripping over stuff out in the middle, and I like that I can walk through here now. It's a whole lot nicer. Let's see if I can show you guys in here. Look at that. Just marred it. See all that silicone inside there? Yeah, it's not supposed to be like that for sure. So yeah, they ruined the crankshaft. But luckily, I had actually traded. So in the Charger, it's got a 440 in it. I have an RV, and I had actually bought a well, somebody just said you could just retap and rethread it. I don't think you can on this one because it's the same diameter bolt, and I'd be worried about trying to tap the same diameter with that garbage of threads on it. But Dad actually has another 360 that I traded for him. I traded him a 360 that I had plus some cash on top to buy the 440 from him back when I did the Charger. So he had an extra 360 laying around, and we actually pulled the crank out of it a couple days ago. It was yesterday. He pulled the crank out of it and got it sent to a machine shop to get it turned down and checked over and make sure everything's okay, and then new main bearings and rod bearings, and throw it back in this engine right here, and there you go. So yeah, it's coming together. It's definitely a slow process, but this is going in the petty truck, and then this is going in the Challenger. So just wanted to kind of give you guys an update of what's going on and what the future plans are for a couple things. And you can see that, remember the Challenger, the last video we did on it, did some of the paint fixing on it. I hadn't done a thing since I did this last video you guys saw. Haven't touched the car since then. So you see, still looking good, but still got to finish a whole lot. But anyway, yeah, next video, Challenger, Hemi stuff. Pretty cool. Oh, golly, you people are just so worried about the dents in the car. Who cares? I'll kick it if I have to. This thing I'm going to fix because I gotta. It's touching the tire. But what does it matter? Jeez. Oh. This is what I like to do. I would much rather do with something with that. This stuff is way more fun than fixing a stupid dent in a car. I like working on an engine better. Throwing this thing together, tearing it down, and seeing what we got. What gen is that, Hemi? This is a Gen 3. It's a 5.7 out of an 06 Grand Cherokee. 64,000 miles. I got the tag somewhere. I think they might have kept the tag when I bought it. I bought it from a local junkyard just down the road from me, and known them for years. Really good people to work with. So that was the plan. This stinking engine stand it's good, except for when you have to roll the engine. It's got this goofy little pin right here that you can't. I like this one better. You can just loosen this bolt up, rotate it where you want it, tighten it back up, and it stays there. This one, you got holes drilled all around it that you got to You got to pull that out, rotate it however many degrees, get it lined up, drop it back in there. I'm like, nah. Is that the 2,000 pound stand? Hey, Mike, what's up? Classic Mustangs 429. Yes, it is. Everything about this stand is good. I like this stand, and it's a fold up. You know, you can fold the legs up when you're not using it, and it's great for storage. So whenever you have it folded up, it's about this long right here. That's great, but for some reason they changed the design here. Versus this is a Harbor Freight too. This thing is vintage. It is old, and it's held many an engine. You know, big blocks, small blocks, you name it. Held my 440 perfectly fine, but for some reason they changed this right here. You know, used to you could just boop, loosen that up, rotate it where you wanted it, tighten it back up, and it would stay. But this one, you got to pull this stinking pin and pull it out, and then there's holes drilled all along here that you have to drop the pin in. Other than that, I like the stand. It does well, and it does. I mean, it rotates okay, but I think this little tiny whatever garbage they give you to rotate an engine, this is just about good enough to just beat somebody over the head with. Worthless. I got a pry bar to rotate the thing. And this isn't even a heavy engine, so imagine if you had an engine that was close to the ton capacity. You'd really be pushing your luck with that little bar right there to rotate the whole thing. So I didn't want it getting away from me, so I just use a pry bar. Oh, did you decide whether you want the spoiler or the luggage rack? See, I don't know, and you'll have to excuse all the stuff on the deck lid. See, when I bought the luggage rack, and even when I was doing the video, I was looking at the car. I was like, man, I don't know if I like it. The idea of the luggage rack, I love, but when I actually put it on the car, because that was the first time I put it on the car in the video, I just couldn't get behind it. So I don't think I'm going to do it. And I don't even think I'm going to put a spoiler at all. This car just looks so good the way it just rounds off on the back side. So I think I'm just going to leave it alone. I don't even want to put a spoiler on it at all. But the luggage rack will come back in something. It just won't be on this thing. So when I actually looked at it and saw the idea in reality, I just couldn't get behind it on this car. But anyway, it'll be okay. There was a question that I wanted to. You going to put a carburetor on the new motor, or are you going to roll with fuel injection? I want to leave the fuel injection system. Now we're going to make a couple upgrades to this fuel injection system, and the good thing about this is that, and I'll go into detail with it in the video that's coming out on the next part of the Challenger series, is Holly's going to help us out in getting us a harness. And I mentioned a second ago that there weren't many like self-learning EFI systems out there, or a lot of systems that were able to tune. You either had to, especially for the VVT engines, you had to run basically a factory setup. So if you ever did a cam intake, header upgrade, anything like that, you pretty much have to go get the engine retuned. And if I were to do a factory style harness, I got to take it to somebody because I don't have the capability to do that. But with the Holley Terminator X system, they allow you to make all the adjustments that you want to. And it runs like one of their EFI systems where you plug it in, you tell the system what you got, it'll learn, it'll self-tune itself to what your parameters are. So if I upgrade a cam, all I have to do is reset up that self-learning EFI system, punch a couple buttons in there, and then done. And I don't have to make a harness, I don't have to do anything like that, just do a couple things. Another thing that I'm going to do is, this is a deadhead fuel system. I want to run a return style fuel rail. So you see, you got your fuel comes in on one side, it crosses over, and then done. Doesn't go back. I want it to go back. Obviously, I want to get a fuel rail that you have an inlet on one side, and then it'll cross over, have an inlet on this side, and then a return style regulator that will regulate the pressure and then bring it right back to the tank. Because if you guys remember a few videos back, we got the Tank's Inc. Phytech fuel injection system, got the pump. So all we'll have to do is make our own fuel lines going up to the fuel rail, get a regulator, then run another line back, and then we're good to go. Set the regulator to PSI to what we need it to be, and that's all we got to do. It might upgrade the injectors, might do a couple things to make it better, but all in all, the goal of this build is to show the guys out there who want to, guys and girls, all we got to be all inclusive, because hey, there's plenty of Mopar girls out there too. Anyway, we want to I want to show you guys, and this is what I talked about from the beginning on this car, is that you can take, and that's why there's the dents in the fender and the dents in the door, and I'm tired of talking about it, but I'm going to go on my soapbox again if I'm not careful. But anyway, I want to show you guys that you can take a car. It doesn't have to be perfect, and you don't have to worry about the way that the car looks necessarily. You don't have to spend a bunch of money to make a car the way that it is. You can have a lot of fun and do the best that you want and have a cool car in the end. It doesn't have to be a six-figure car to have fun. And that's why I have been daydreaming about doing the Hemi swap. And this is something I've always wanted to do, but I've never had, I don't know, I've always been kind of scared to do it, I guess you could say. But now, I mean, there's companies out there that make it so much easier, and a little bit of research, and get the swap mounts, the bell housing's the same. It's easier than you would think, and that's really what the goal of this build is. I want to prove to you guys that, hey, you can go out there and, for instance, we'll just have a little bit of a taste of what I want to talk about in the next video. So let's just say you start out with a basic short block, or you have a basic engine like this. Let's say this engine costs $500. Okay, you got a complete running 360, pretty good little engine. Now let's say you want to upgrade it to have everything that this car already has. This car has aluminum heads. All right, you're looking at like what? At least $1,500 to run aluminum heads, not considering all the stuff that you got to add for supporting parts, rockers, valve springs, push rods, all the like. Now let's say you want a full roller cam. All right, there's another $1,000, depending on what you get. And then you want, well, I don't want to compare it to that, but I'm trying, at least for like the intake system, we'll leave that out, at least the fuel system, because that's kind of a personal preference for people, so I understand. So let's say you want an upgraded intake at least. We'll say that $300 right there. Let's say you want a we'll see, I think this one comes with a little bit over, is it 9.5 or 10-to-1 compression? If I remember, I don't remember, but it's around that area. So let's say you want to do that with this thing. This one's coming from the factory with like 8.5, if that. So, new pistons, you have to balance it, you have to bore it if you have any kind of a ring ridge. And 64,000 miles on one of these engines is a heck of a lot different than 64,000 miles on a newer engine. The reason I say that is because you gotta take into the account that these newer engines have overdrive, they have they have better fuel management systems, so the engine is at least taking care of itself in a better way, because these engines usually had something going wrong about it. So like if the carburetor was probably bolted on, never touched again. Hardly ever changes oil, which, I mean, that's an issue with these too, but, you get my point. So and I'm not knocking these. I think these are great engines, and I love these things. Love a small block. Cannot beat them for what they are. But just to kind of get this engine to the exact same place that this engine is going to take you pretty much the same, if not more, to get it at least to this point where this engine is stock. So just food for thought. I love small blocks, but I just want you guys to understand that, these 5.7s and 6.1s aren't as far out of reach as you think they are. They're not really as hard to get to, hard to attain. They're not as unobtainable as you think. So that's really kind of what I'm trying to get after, at least. Does that all make sense? Is that cool? That's true, but you need custom engine mounts, custom exhaust, and cooling system. Well, I mean, do you not need that for this thing too? You gonna run cast iron manifolds on your hot small block with aluminum heads, roller cam? Don't think so. I didn't buy these. I didn't buy these manifolds. They're coming with it. I'm putting them in the car. They're perfect. I mean, that's what these are the ideal swap manifolds right there. And I'm putting them in the car. It's going in just like that. Yeah, you're gonna need mounts, but you're gonna need mounts to this one. Those are truck mounts. Let's say I want to put a V8 in this car. Say I didn't have any mounts. I'm gonna need mounts for it too. So, got to think about that kind of stuff. What happened to the Charger? Nothing. I just don't drive it. It makes me mad because every time I look at it, I got to work on it. This is a modern Hemi. Yeah, this is an '06. I mean, it's not the most current, but it is structurally the same. And when they went to the newer style in like 2009, they did restructure the block, redesign the heads, the intake, and exhaust. And it's similar to it's structurally the same, but it's also completely different, if that makes sense. They just redesigned everything pretty much. Has anyone been successful installing a VVT engine into a Classic? Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, there's definitely ways to do it. And like I mentioned earlier, is that you can run a factory style harness with the VVT. The only thing about it is that there's just not enough aftermarket support yet for the VVT. So that's why I went with this one, because there is the aftermarket capability with the harness. There's tunability capabilities within that harness, within that engine management system. So being that this is my first Hemi swap, I want it to go as simple as possible, making it as easy on me. So that way when the time comes and the capability for a VVT engine is out there, I'll already have my 2015 to ready to go in something else. So that's my logic behind it, and that's why I didn't want to go with that 2015. And the fact that it was fouling out spark plugs. The guy said it was a valve seal, and I don't know. I didn't verify that, and it was missing a lot of the parts. I don't know. I don't remember if I had injectors or not. I can't remember. Missing a lot of the accessories on the front. So I don't even remember if it had coil packs on it. I hadn't looked at it in a while, but this thing just has a lot of the accessories and a lot of the bolts, the hardware. That's the hardest stuff to find, is the hardware, all the little bits and pieces. So that's kind of the logic for me. And I'm not saying that the 2015 will go away, but this thing is basically for me to learn on, because I've always wanted to do one of these, and it just makes it easier to go with something that's already had the research done for it. And you know what I mean? So it's just more of a learning curve. I'm out here learning just like you guys, and this is a big challenge for me because it's something I've never done. So I've only focused on those right there. So I want to just learn on these because, just making sure I can do it in the future if I ever wanted to, just to challenge myself. Mike, Dylan, are you going? You're killing me. You were funny. .1 heads and intake bolt on. Well, true, but I don't have that. I've got a 5.7 heads and intake, so that's what I'm going to stick with for now. And like I mentioned before, we'll inspect the cam, the heads, the lifters, and all that stuff. And that's another reason why I want to go with this self-learning EFI system, is that when I put the car in, I plan to do upgrades in the future. So we're basically overcompensating in the harness to make sure that we have the ability to upgrade in the future. So if we do change intakes, do change heads, change the cam, put long tube headers on it, we're able to just say, hey, Holly system, this is what my new cam profile is. This is what my new desired RPM model is. This is that. So you just have the capability to say, hey, these are the new parameters. Now, based on this, learn what I want you to set your parameters too. So you have like your desired AFR. You can do a lot of stuff to it, a lot of tiny, for max output. I could take it to a dyno and get somebody to really maximize the performance on it, but I don't have to. And that's what I like about it. If I ever do an upgrade to it, I don't have to have somebody else work on the car for me. I can do all that myself, and I can see what kind of timing curve I got put in. I can see all this stuff. That's what I like. And this engine did run. This engine did run before it was pulled. I can vouch for that. The people that I got the engine from have always checked their engines before they pull them. And the Jeep was wrecked from the rear. I actually saw the engine, the Jeep that it came out of. It was wrecked in the rear, so that's why it got pulled. And they inspect the engine, drained it of all the fluids after they ran it, and put it in storage. So, but now it's in our possession, and we get to have some fun with it. Have you bought any fiberglass hoods before? Need to buy a new hood for my Duster to fit the tunnel ram, and we'll see if you had any advice with them. No, I haven't, but I mentioned in a recent video, was it the exterior upgrades? I think it was part 16, and talked about running a fiberglass hood on this thing. I can't remember the name of the company, but I've heard a lot of good stuff from them. I can't think of their name. Go on Instagram and look up Bryce Cold, BryceCold. He's got a 70 Cornet that he just built, or he's been building here recently, and he put a fiberglass 6-pack hood on it. That thing looks awesome. And I can't remember the company that he went with, but fiberglass hoods are hit and miss. Some are good, some are bad. Yeah, and that's why I'd say go with someone reputable. But Bryce on Instagram, I actually asked him about it. He said that the quality of the hood was great. It was really smooth. He just had to do a couple of minor fixes, which you would have to do on if you bought a brand new fender, brand new door, brand new hood from like anybody. They're not going to come perfect. You have to do a little bit of body work to make them perfect. So it's, being that they're mass produced, they can't say, hey, they're laser straight and everything that they do. But that's why, you do have to account for any kind of tooling imperfections. So you're going to auto or manual transmission? It will be a manual transmission. This car is a factory 3-speed manual. So the plan is to run at least for the time being until maybe something else comes up, run like an overdrive 833 4-speed. So it's 3 forward gears. Third gear is 1-to-1, and then fourth gear is overdrive. Now, I know that the gear spacing is not ideal, but it's perfect for this car because we plan to road trip it. And I want it to be that low first gear too, that's pretty good for like getting out of the hole, maybe like with autocross or something like that. So we're going to go with a pretty low gear in the back, depending on what our final tire size combo is in the rear. This is like a 26-inch tire, so if we go with a little bit taller tire and a 0.78 final drive, we'll be in the ballpark. We can run like a 391, so that would be pretty ideal. Especially, there's my little security camera. My Wi-Fi went out one day, and I hadn't fixed it yet. But anyway, the Hemi will like that overdrive, and that's what the plan is, at least for now. So yes, I'm actually in talks with Brewers Performance. They said they're going to they were helping me figure out what parts I needed, at least to get the Hemi swap going. And they've got the flywheel you need. They've got everything, basically, the clutch and pressure plate. So all I have to do is drop the order and get things going, get the ball rolling. That's another thing I'm getting stuff ready to do. So I'm excited about it. Putting this with a 4-speed behind it will be pretty fun, I think. And then that leaves us with the option, if we ever want to do like a 5-speed or 6-speed or whatever that may be, we have the opportunity to change over and do what we want. So, we've got options in that realm, but it's already set up for an 833 style transmission, and that's what we're going to go with. I've got the bell housing in the car is for a 4-speed. Now, if you go with the overdrive, you have to have an overdrive bell housing due to the different size of the bearing retainer on the front of the transmission. I've got all that. I've got everything to go. Got a car overdrive transmission. So there we go. Where's the Hemi install on the priority list? Well, it's number one basically because the car won't run without it. Really, realistically, what the plan is, waiting on some vintage air AC. I'm going to pull the old AC box out, put the vintage air kit in it, and once that's done, the dash can go in because the windshield can't go in until the dash goes in. So once all that's done, we'll get the dash put in and assemble it over time. We don't have to totally do it just yet, but at that point, we can put in our windshield, get all the trim back on, and then we'll drop the engine in. Because then at that point, once the engine's in, we can wire up the car. That's the biggest thing. We can't really wire up the car without the engine being in place because we don't know where a lot of our major components will be. Because then at that point, once the car is totally wired, we can put our kick panels in, the carpet, the back door panels, and then put our center console back in. So it's kind of like a lot of stuff revolves around this thing, but there's also some things that have to happen before this thing can go in. And the windshield doesn't necessarily have to go in before that, but I just want to have that windshield in there before I'm done. I want to have that dash in place and get the steering column back in, because then I can kind of start looking and see how clearance things are going to go. But the good thing about this car is that it's manual steering, so it doesn't necessarily have an issue with clearance problems with this manifold. And I mentioned earlier that this is the ideal swap manifold because look how much tighter they sit up against the valve cover. So the manual steering box sits about right here, but it's a lot smaller than your power steering box from the factory. So unless you're running some kind of aftermarket power steering box, the power steering is an issue. But this car doesn't have it, and I didn't want it because I wanted it to be a good road-hugging car, really good for tight turns and stuff like that. The car was manual steering, manual brakes, and we're going back with that. So I like the functionality of it and the ease of maintenance, basically. So we'll run a power steering delete pulley right here, and then it's going to have air. It'll have AC, and so I think the AC compressor mounts down here, if I remember correctly, and then your alternator mounts over here. So when I put all that on, and the good thing about is it Bachelion or something like that? I don't know how to pronounce it. They do a lot of Hemi stuff, and that power steering delete actually still utilizes a factory belt, and that's what I like, because if something were to happen and I shred a belt on the interstate, I can go into like a O'Reilly's or an Advanced or AutoZone or anything like that and say, hey, do you have a belt for a 2006 5.7 Jeep Cherokee? And they're like, yeah, sure. Zoop, done. That's the goal. I want this car to be a road trip car, but since we drive our cars, we got to be able to work on our cars. So if we're out in the middle of nowhere, 1,000 miles away from home, what are we going to do if a coil pack fails? What are we going to do if a belt throws or a water pump goes bad? What are we going to do? Oh, wait, it's all factory parts, and typically any part store is going to have what you need to fix what your issue is. And that's what I like about running factory components. Like on this kind of engine, you can get a water pump pretty much anywhere in stock. You can get, valve cover gaskets within the day, basically. You can get a lot of parts, and not saying that like aftermarket stuff is a bad thing, but it sure does help if you're driving the car. If your intended purpose is to drive the car more than anything, then utilizing a lot of the factory components helps out a lot more in the long run. So that's what the goal is. And I want to, as far as like the exterior of the engine and basic components, it'll be mostly factory. And that's the goal, because you can get a lot of parts for the engine that you need. So that's kind of where I'm thinking. That's where my mindset is, at least. I'm looking for a, how do you address the lifter and cam issue the 5.7 has? I don't think it's a big issue. Um, I know it, I've heard of people having that issue, but I've got a buddy that has he's got an '05 Magnum, and it's got probably over 200,000 miles on it and has no lifter tick that I'm aware of. And if it does, then he hasn't told me about it. So I don't think that it's as big of an issue. I'm going to pull that apart and check it over. And I want to do the big thing too is that if this thing does have MDS, I'm going to do an MDS delete, get the plugs for it, and get new lifters for it. And while I'm there, might as well do a cam swap if I'm at that point. But yeah, I'm going to probably replace the lifters just to be on the safe side and get rid of the MDS because I don't need it. So hydraulic lifters are super easy to change. Yeah, absolutely. I agree. Yeah, that's one thing I'm going to check them over. Like I said, I want to pull the engine apart, and in the next video when we talk about, if you guys hadn't seen me mention this earlier, the reason I have these engines sitting side by side is I'm going to measure the size comparison of these engines. That I had a lot of people comment about how much bigger the Hemi is versus a small block, and that's not necessarily the case. You know, we have definitely the heads are a lot bigger for sure than comparing them to the old style small block, but look how much room you save with these factory manifolds. I mean, they're tucked up in there nice, while the big cast iron ones stick out like that far. So there's differences, there's pros and cons. I want to show the guys out there running small block stuff that it's not as hard as you think to swap a Hemi in one of these cars. And just to show, because the bell housing patterns are the exact same. The only difference between the bell housing pattern is that the Hemi doesn't have a hole right here. Only thing that's different. So yeah, and this one has a lot more of the accessories in the front versus this one, but still, you know, they're basically the same height, and the Hemi's probably a little bit wider, but I want to measure from block to block and then the entire length of the engines themselves just to show you. And I mean, I doubt this thing is much bigger than a big block, honestly. And these cars were built to handle a big block. So if a big block will fit, I don't see why this one wouldn't fit. I've seen EFI tanks. Do you need one of them with the system you're doing? So you don't have to go to what I did. You can use an electric pump with a pre-filter and a post-filter. The biggest thing is making sure that you maintain a constant fuel pressure. And that's what I was talking about earlier with running an actual fuel rail with a return system built into it, and then actually putting a regulator with a bypass regulator on it. So I did go with a new tank on this one. It was the Tanks Inc. With a Phytech pump. So all that's, you know, it's all in the car. Let me see if I can get up under there. You guys can see it. So that's that's actually painted too. So it's like I said, Tanks Inc. pump. It's a factory style pump. Goes right in the factory location, and then the pump itself is on top, and the sending unit's on top as well. And it has an inlet and an outlet that you just have to make your own lines to. And the plan that I want to do, again, going back to the maintainability of the engine and the ease of repair, is I'm actually going to run a rubber high pressure line instead of running like a braided line, because if you run a braided line from the tank all the way up to the fuel inlet, and then from the fuel outlet all the way over to the return on the tank, let's say you have a leak in one of your fittings, or you have a line that gets a cut in it or a break, you got to replace the entire line. And I don't want to do that. So the point of that is, if you run like a rubber connector from the outlet side of the tank to a hard metal line all the way up to here, and then a junction that's rubber from the firewall over to here, if you split this line right here for any reason whatsoever, it's as simple as getting more EFI line and taking this off, putting it back on, putting your clamps on, done. And that's why I like the way that the braided hose works, and I like the way that it looks. But if you ever have anything leak on it, it's, hey, you're stranded on the side of the road and you're gonna have to replace it all. You know what I mean? So that's why I'm like, I'm gonna use stainless steel 3/8 for the return, and for the pump side and the return side 3/8, and then have rubber hose connecting the engine to the lines themselves, just for that extra little bit of maintenance availability, I guess you could say. Is the Hemi going in the Challenger? Yes. Isn't that 5.7 around 340 horsepower? Why not get a 375 horsepower VVT? Talked about that earlier. I've said that I'm on number 2 on that round, so if you want to hear my explanation about that, just scroll back a few minutes. Let me keep going. Estimated time for the car to finish. I'm not rushing it, so I don't know. Really got a lot of progress made with getting this engine ready to go, and honestly, once I'm going to test fit everything for sure. Once I get my mounts, I'm going to drop this in there just to see how everything fits before we take it apart. But I do want to, well, I don't know. It just depends on how things are working. But like I said, just waiting on parts is the biggest thing right now due to the coronavirus situation. With shipping times are just a lot slower now. So if we can get everything sorted out, then we'll hopefully have the engine ready. I'm hoping that the goal is to have this car driving for Power Tour. If it doesn't make it, then I'm not going to have my feelings hurt, but that's my goal. I would really love to drive this thing on Power Tour like the Challenger or the Charger did last year, but the problem with the Charger was that it was last minute, and I kind of did it backwards. I got the car, I spent way too much time on the engine. Spent like, I got to detail this part, paint this, paint that. Spent way too much time on that garbage when I could have been actually driving the car. I didn't realize how much of a turd it is because I didn't like anything that happened with it because I rushed it. So there's a lot of things that just didn't go right because I was down to the last 2 weeks of the build and realized that nothing was going right. So this car I'm really taking my time with, so I'm not really in a hurry. But, I mean, we've really come a long way if you think about it. I mean, this car, I started on it, back in September of last year? September, October. So let's see. We do September, October, November, December, January, February, March, April, May. So that's 8 months that we've worked on this car. In 8 months, we've completely fixed the floor pans, put a frame rail and a trunk floor in it, rebuilt the front suspension, rebuilt the rear suspension, totally redid the brakes, new interior parts coming in and working on. And then we got a 5.3 or 5.7 Hemi going into the car. You know, there's a lot of things that have happened in the past 8 months. So you got to realize that this isn't like a TV show that you see. This is my real life, and this is me really working on a car that I want. This isn't, hey, we got to meet a deadline in 2 episodes, and each episode's 30 minutes long. And that's not the case. This is me trying to teach you guys as I teach myself stuff, basically. So there's really no deadline because it's when the car's done. And honestly, no car's ever done, to be real. This car is going to have a bunch of stuff done to it. So many upgrades in the future, even past this, what I do to it. So there's going to be a lot of stuff happen to this car. Somebody mentioned about where's the Aspen. The 79 Aspen that I got running for a couple video series. I pressure washed it and won. That car I gave away. Gave it to a friend of mine who was having some issues with a car that he had because he said a reckless driver ran off the road and actually hit the car, but he didn't have insurance on it yet because he was still working on it, wasn't drivable, so insurance didn't cover the fact that his car got destroyed. So he was out all that money he spent, and I said, well, hey, I've got this Dodge Aspen, and I have no idea what I'm going to do with it. I made it run, and that's it. I said, if you want it, you can come have it. So he ended up picking it up, and I don't know what he's done with it since then. The last time I talked to him about it, he had pulled the engine and bought a set of wheels for it and was getting ready to put a 4-speed in it, but that's the last time I talked to him about it. Restoration series on a budget, Project Daisy. That one hit a snag, and that was about the same time that the Challenger started ramping up, and I realized that I needed to focus my attention on the one series at a time, because when I don't, I get sidetracked and then I get behind. So I decided, if I'm going to work on one, I'd rather get the Challenger going and get that as a series. Daisy ended up having low compression in 2 cylinders, I think, and so it's a 6-cylinder, right? And it had 120 in 4 cylinders and then 90 in 2 cylinders. They were side by side, but I don't think it's a head gasket because it's blowing all sorts of blow by out the breather cap. So, and I could not make it auto right. So what was happening was, when you have a misfire, you can find out which cylinder it is, and the way to do that is I'll show you on this engine right here. You've got your spark plugs here, right? Your distributor sitting in the back. You got plug wires, 4 plug wires on each side running out to the spark plugs. So as it's running, you can pull a plug wire, put it back on. If there's no change in idle, you found the cylinder that has a misfire. If it does change, if it runs even worse, then that's a cylinder that's not a misfire. And what happened was, I had verified I was getting spark to all 6 cylinders. I made sure of that. And whenever I would pull those 2 middle spark plugs, I could pull it out. I could literally pull out the plug wire, stick a plug in it, and watch it spark. It was actually getting fire to that spark plug. But whenever I plugged it into the spark plug in the engine, it wouldn't change the idle. So it's not getting any spark in those 2 cylinders. It would not get any power, and it just ran awful. It would blow black smoke out the back because it was running so rich, and the engine was doing like this back and forth because it's only running on 4 cylinders. So it was unfortunate, and that's why another reason why I kind of put the budget build to a halt. It's definitely something that I'll revisit. I'm going to revisit Project Daisy. And the plan is actually do a 318 swap, do a budget 318 swap. What would be cool is to put one of these in there, but I'm not going to do that. I don't want to go that crazy just yet. I have a 318 and a 904 ready to go. It's already got a car pan on it. I've got car manifolds. I've got a 4-barrel intake. I've got the non-power steering, non-AC pulleys and belts to go with it. I've got everything ready. Got the fan. The only thing I like is carburetor, distributor, which I've got a distributor somewhere around here, and then I've got plug wires around here somewhere too. I need the conversion mounts because it's a slant 6 cross member. I'll need a conversion mounts to go from a slant 6 to a V8, but I will revisit it. And being that it's a 904, my drive shaft will work. I've got the car has 13-inch wheels and tires on it. I actually bought a set of 14-inch small bolt pattern wheels for it, and I've got tires for it. I've got 2 fenders for it. What else do I put a new bumper on it, which I think I don't know if I showed that in the video or not. I think that was going to be part 2, but then part 2 never happened. I've got a lot of good parts for that car that it just needs. This car needs to be finished first. That's the goal. Once this car is finished, then Daisy will get to come back. Then Rump will come back for a little mini series I've got planned. So we've got a lot of stuff in the pipeline ready to go. It's just a matter of me trying to focus on one build at a time because it's easier on me, and just keeps, because then I don't get as many questions like, what did you do here? When did you do that? Or stuff like that. Because when the Charger dropped, when I started doing stuff with it, I would kind of do it sporadically. I'd work on this car over here, work on this car over here. Then the Charger's going to sprinkle out in the middle, and there were no parts. I didn't have like part 1, part 2, part 3, and that was the problems that people would ask me, like, "What did you do this? What did you do that? What happened here?" and it's been a lot nicer on this car because I've had a series going on. It's been way easier for me to manage doing it in just one car at a time, because this is the only car I think about now. I mean, I'm thinking about other stuff, but my main focus is getting this one ready to go. So anyway, yeah, Daisy's going to come back at some point, but when that'll happen, it's when this car's at least running and driving. Dylan, you're running low on elbow grease after all that sanding. How sore were your arms? Made a huge difference in the car. Yeah, there were some times when I got pretty sore, and I was pretty tired after some days. And it's funny because a lot of the sanding I didn't even film. And what I actually looked, and I filmed it on my GoPro, and there's like a 12-minute section of just me doing a time lapse of me actually sanding. And so I think for every 30 seconds you saw was 5 minutes of me sanding. Like 5 minutes in real time was for every 30 seconds. So just put it in perspective what was going on. So every 5 minutes, so put it this way, every 10 minutes in real time was 1 minute of video. So if I had 12 minutes of video, 10 minutes times 12 minutes is 120 minutes. What you saw just on camera in that GoPro, that 12-second GoPro section, was 2 hours worth of me sanding. That was it. Just that one little section. And that's all that, I mean, that's just counting what I filmed on the GoPro. So it was a lot of work, a heck of a lot of work. And I'm still not even done with it. You can still see, I haven't touched anything since the last video. Since what you guys saw last, have not touched it yet. Actually, the last little section that I filmed was filmed the day before I posted it. So if it gives you kind of perspective on how long I have to work on these videos for you guys, but not complaining or anything, but it does take a lot of work. So think about it this way. The next video you see, this is when I put the engine on the stand. Tonight is when I put the engine on the stand. So you'll see it come through. But it'll be a cool little build, I think. And we'll go through the engine on camera, make sure everything's going to look okay. Fuel tank will need to be dropped and clean. Go back a few videos and actually just scroll back and look at the tank that I've already put in this thing. She's a beaut. So anyway, that's kind of where we're at. We're making some progress here and there. Type of transmission, be an 833 style transmission. Should invite a bunch of friends over and offer some pizza for a sanding party. I could, but then I don't know if I could trust. I'd be so nervous watching people sand on my car for an hour. Oh, that'd be terrifying. I get nervous just me doing it myself. I couldn't imagine somebody else doing it for me. I tried to get a local company that is like a detailing company to sand, or like not sand, but buff these sections right here that have like these light scratches in it. Because these are not, you can't feel any of this. None of this is like deep scratches. But I asked him, like, what would you do? Or like, could you buff the sections that are like nice, all this stuff right here? And he says, no, can't do it. Your car is in disrepair. Like, oh, okay, whatever. So I don't know what I'm going to do about the scratches in it. I'm going to have to get some more elbow grease out and see if I can. I might actually try and pay somebody to buff it if I can. I want to get somebody to do it because I do not want to do that. Going to be so many different depths in the metal if you do a sanding party. Yeah, absolutely. But I like looking at this engine sitting next to this car. That makes me happy. Finally getting to see a dream of mine, really, from the beginning. And, the Hemi plan was really kind of what I was on track with from, like, really early on with this build. And the only reason that it happened was because I found that good deal on that 2015. But, again, there's just too many unknowns in that engine. So that's why this one ended up going what I ended up going with. And had a lot of excitement. And it's something new for me. It's basically the basic functionality of the engine is the same, but there's so many different new things that I have to learn on this engine that makes me excited. So I'm excited. We're gonna clean it up. It was sitting in the bottom shelf of a junkyard warehouse for a while, so it's got some dust built up on it and a little bit of dirt. We'll clean it up and make it look pretty nice. Um, Probably get the timing cover cleaned up and get it nice and smooth and clear it with some high temp clear for the aluminum parts, and then paint the engine. I like that it's black. Might just clean it up and then clear it if it'll stay. I like the black engine. It doesn't bother me a bit. I'm not gonna paint it Hemi orange, that's for sure. Oh, hold on. Somebody said something about. I like this comment. Somebody said that the new Hemis eat timing or eat cams, and then who is it? Razvan Idaran. I'm sorry if I mispronounced that. Said, no, they're not. They're great, providing you maintain them like any other engine. Thank you. I'll leave it at that. Can you set up the motor electric yourself? That's where Holley's coming in with the Terminator X system. That's where I'm leaning on them for the aftermarket support, because yes, you can make your own harness. I am not smart enough to do that. I do not want to mess that up and goof up any kind of wiring or electrical system on this engine. And I don't want to put a factory harness in it because I want the capability to tune the engine myself, or at least be able to see all of my engine's capabilities and see like timing curves, see fuel pressure, see AFR, oil pressure, all that stuff within their display. So yes, I'm going to use the Holley Terminator X system, and it's self-learning just like you would if you put a throttle body on an older engine. You know, it's all self-learning. You tell the little handheld system, hey, this is what my engine is. It's got this much displacement, this much duration on the cam, this many cylinders, what my fuel pressure is, all that stuff, and then it'll set a base tune and then allow the engine to tune itself based on what your AFR reading is at idle at different varying RPMs, and then it'll actually set your throttle position sensor. You'll do it for wide. You'll do it from fully shut all the way wide open. So it's pretty cool, a very cool system to make work. And that's why I'm excited about it. And whenever I go for future upgrades, we've got the capability of tuning it ourselves. We don't have to go to some kind of tuner to make our engine run right. We can tell the system this is what's new. And I can even do also, I mean, they have it set up to where you can run forced induction, nitrous. They have timing control systems. So it's awesome what the Holley system can do. And that's why I really wanted to go with it in the first place, because there's so much tunability within that system as it is. Keeping the manual transmission, again, yes, the 833 style transmission will stay in the car. It's a 3-speed right now, but I'm switching over to a overdrive 4-speed. What headers? TTI or Jeep? These are factory cast iron Jeep manifolds. I'm leaving those in because you can see how much clearance they provide. They're very tight against the head themselves, and that's why I like them. They're really ideal for the SWAT guys out there. There's people out there who make long tubes, don't really care for long tube headers, but you know, eventually if we ever do go for something like that, then we have the option. But the manifolds will be perfectly fine for what they are right now. The Daninator, looking forward to the day when you fire the engine up when it's resting between the fenders. You and me both. I've never heard this car run, even with the old engine, so never heard it actually make noise. So that's what's exciting. First car you worked on, my 74 Dart Sport, and I still have it. I actually just bought it back, was it Christmas Eve? Yeah, I went and bought it back. Oh, hey, Austin, I saw your comment there. Will it run the 8th? Probably nothing. To write your prediction. If it'll run less than a 10, I'll be happy. I don't want to overcompensate. That's for sure. Hey man, I got something else for you though. I got my Cordoba that I need to bring out there to the 8th mile. That little Cordoba is pretty fun. It's the mild big block, but it's I think it was set up for the 8th mile the way they built it. What's the engine? 5.7 Hemi, and that's a 360 out of like an 80. I think it's an 84 model 360. Don't cheap out on brake pads or spark plugs. Yeah, they got EBCs on it. I don't know. Spark plugs I haven't done yet, so. Gonna delete the MDS. Yes, if it has MDS, I will get the plugs and the appropriate lifters to do so. Do you need an O2 sensors with the Holley system? Yes, but it comes with the O2 sensors. The system actually has all that included. So yeah, you will need that because that's how it self-tunes itself. Because as you know, as the mixture is either too lean or too rich, the Holley management system is telling the engine to provide either more or less fuel based on what the O2 sensor is reading. So you know, as you let it run, it learns, hey, this is too much fuel here, too little fuel here, and then the more you drive it, the more that it understands this is where you need it. You know, to add or subtract fuel or timing or whatever the case may be. Your Jeep is a 2006. I'm trying to catch up on these comments. Sorry, guys. Hot Rod Power Tour when the country opens back up. Yeah, as of right now, regardless, I will be on Power Tour, whether it's with this car or something else. I would love to take this car. That would be my plan. But if not, I've got plenty of backups in case that does not happen. So, yeah, the main goal for right now is get this Challenger hitting Power Tour. And if it doesn't happen, I'm not going to be upset because I'm not going to rush this car like I did the Charger. I want it to be fairly enjoyable for me. I want to take my time and do the steps properly. That's why this is taking so long to do. Even though it's only been 8 months, I want to do it the way that I want to do it. Take your 73 LTD on tour. That would be pretty fun. Go do some donuts. That car was awesome. I love that car. I wish it was just, I don't know. I just wish it had more to it than what it is. Should get new wheels. I kind of like the wheels I got. I polished them a little bit, but they got dirty again from me wet sanding. I polished that one right there. I really like the way those look. They're really lightweight, so with some good set of tires, they will hug the road. Any regrets right now with the Challenger? Showing you guys the dent in the door. Should have just hit it. No, not really, no. That's why, like I just mentioned, you know, taking my time is where I've had the most fun, is actually making it to what I want it to be for myself, you know. So that's where I've had a lot of fun. And I'm more on the mechanical side of things anyway. I enjoy stuff like that more, and that's why this car is going to be more of a mechanically sound vehicle than anything. That's my goal. So other than that, no, I really haven't had any regrets yet. You know, ask me that when I'm done. But so far, no, I've had a lot of fun with this car. I mean, there's been some times when I've been mad at it, trying to get stuff to work. But overall, this whole endeavor has been way more enjoyable than it ever was with my Charger, just because I didn't rush it and I did it to more of my liking. Basically, I didn't worry about not only what others thought, but deadlines and, you know, hey, so-and-so said to do this, okay, I'll do that. So, you know, if I had a dollar for every time somebody said you should do this or are you going to do that, this car would be restored. But, you know, that's just not how it's going to happen. But no regrets so far, just because I've been taking my time and really having fun with it. That's the best thing. I've actually really enjoyed working on this car. Because on the Charger, you know, I spent so much time, like I mentioned earlier, I spent so much time making the engine run and doing all these little stupid details that didn't even matter. and spending so much time on that. But I had it running and driving before I even started on the trunk floor, and that's why I did this thing backwards. Is fix the things that the body needs, to my liking at least. It's structural damage, and get it to where it can be ready once the engine goes in. This car can drive. So that's the whole thing. Shirts for the dent would be a great idea. I'd buy one. I'm actually wearing one. This is the, hold on, let me see if I can turn the camera around. I made this shirt, and it says it's straight besides the dents. I'm actually about to do another order on it, but I'll have to let you guys know when that comes out. But I did do it, and it's straight besides the dents t-shirt on this, and it had a picture of this Challenger on the back of it. Most challenging part of the project, probably so far, had to be the back side of the car, the frame rail and the trunk floor, because that was stuff that if you don't get right, then it's bad. But thankfully, at least from what I can tell, everything went together properly and it looks clean underneath. And once I got in there, it really wasn't so bad. I mean, this half of the frame rail was rotted out, but like right here back was really nice. So I was able to cut, splice, and then weld, and I braced it up a little bit. I added some extra welds in there on each end, and I feel like it's really strong now. But that was probably the most daunting part of it, and then getting the trunk floor in there and laying flat. But after that, I mean, that's pretty much been the worst part. That is until this thing came along. So it could be worse when this thing goes in, and it just depends on what I can figure out, because never done it before. It could be super easy for all I know. There's just a lot of things that I got to learn on this engine. So, did you put in subframe connectors on this car? No, not yet. I want to, but just one of those things that I'm trying to fix what the car needed before I added any. Well, I mean, I did add sway bars and stuff like that, but trying to add the big stuff first. And I do want to add subframe connectors for sure. I can't remember who I told, but I said I want this car to flex so hard that it cracks the windshield. So that's still the goal. Pop the gas for the neck for us. All right, yeah, I got you, dude. Just for you guys. There's a rag in there to keep water out. But yeah. All right, guys, it's rolling around 9 o'clock out here. I'm gonna call it quits and go get inside. Got to go to work tomorrow. So I appreciate you all coming out to watch the video. You got any more questions for me before I roll out? I'll answer 3 more questions. Where's Pumpkin? As in Rump, the rusty pumpkin? He's chilling outside right now. I've got some goodies for him. Got some really cool parts that I'm waiting on. Like I said, once the Challenger's done, then I will focus on the Dart, like the Project Daisy, and then move into the Rump and get a couple of mini series out of that. But I've got some plans for it, like a 4-speed swap and some fun stuff going on with the engine. All right, let's go for the second question. What's the truck out front? That's the old abandoned truck. Sits for 24 years or something like that. And it was a slant 6 two-wheel drive long bed that Dad has put on a 1-ton 89 Cummins frame with 37s and a 4-inch lift. And it runs and drives. Still needs some bugs worked out of it, but it does run and drive. All right, last question for tonight. Oh, here's a good one. Do you plan on showing the Challenger to the owner? Yes, or well, I'm the owner, but I do plan on taking it back to the guy I bought it from at some point. I want him to see what the car looks like now and show him that it, because they thought it was done for. They thought it was good for parts. That's what they thought it was. And maybe it was, but I wanted to bring it back to them and show them, hey, this is a car that you sold me. And sure enough, they legit thought that it was a parts car. So, yes, I do plan on taking it back to them, but I'm driving it there. I'm not going to haul it. It was about 2.5 hours away from where I live. That car's going to drive there. So, if they'll let me film it, I will film it, but I'm going to ask their permission first. All right, guys, that's going to do it for the video tonight. This is just a little live stream, just hanging out in the shop. So thank you guys so much for joining in. Thank you guys for liking, commenting, and subscribing. Appreciate all the support that you guys have given me throughout all of the stuff that we've been working on here recently. It really does mean a lot to see all the cool comments and positivity that you guys have towards the Challenger, regardless of what you think about what I do. I appreciate all the support for sure. So again, I respect everybody who comes out here and watches this with me, subscribes, comments, anybody who just hangs out. I just thoroughly enjoy the fact that you're here. So thanks again, guys, and I will see you in the next one.